Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex topics. Okay, today we are digging into a story that actually took 15 years to unfold. It connects those forever chemicals we hear so much about to one of our most vital health numbers, our cholesterol. Let's get right into it. We hear about them all the time, right? They're in our non-stick pans, our raincoats, even our pizza boxes. But what is the long-term price we're paying for all this convenience? We're going to explore the hidden impact of these chemicals, and we'll focus on a group of them that you've definitely heard about. First things first, let's get on the same page. We're talking about PFAS. They're this huge family of chemicals that have earned the nickname forever chemicals. And why? Well, because they are just incredibly tough to break down. That's what makes them great for products, but it becomes a real problem when they start building up in the environment and inside us. So scientists have had a hunch for a while now that PFAS could be linked to health problems. We've had some clues, bits and pieces of the story, but the full picture, especially what happens over a long period of time, is really just now coming into focus. A lot of previous studies have definitely raised some red flags. They've connected PFAS exposure to a whole range of serious health issues, things like liver injury, certain cancers, and problems with reproduction. And, really important for our story today, they've hinted at a link to what they call unfavorable blood lipids, which includes higher cholesterol. Okay, and this is where the story gets really specific and really interesting. Midlife is a time of huge hormonal and metabolic shifts for women, right around the menopausal transition. And it's possible this period could actually make them more vulnerable to the effects of chemical exposures. Honestly, this has been a massive gap in our understanding.
So to answer that exact question, researchers turned to this incredible long-term health study that followed a really diverse group of women for well over a decade.
And we're not talking about a small group here. They looked at data from over 1,100 women who were part of the Study of Women's Health Across the Nation, or SWAN for short. Having a group this large and diverse gives the findings a really solid foundation. So here's how they did it. This is the game plan. They started way back around the year 2000 by measuring the PFAS levels in these women's blood. Then, for the next 15 years, they kept tracking their blood lipid levels. They basically created this super detailed health diary for every single participant through this really critical stage of their lives. Now, what makes this research so different isn't just what they studied, but how they looked at that 15-year journey. This is the key part. I want you to think about it like this. The old way of doing things was kind of like taking a single photo of cholesterol levels, maybe one at the beginning and one at the end, and then comparing the average. You get a little information, sure, but you miss the whole story. This study, though, decided to watch the entire 15-year movie. They used something called a trajectory approach, which let them see that not everyone's story played out the same way. It revealed totally different plot lines for different women. And this method is absolutely perfect for studying women in midlife, because their cholesterol levels don't just go up in a straight line. They can go up, down, they fluctuate. In fact, get this. This new approach revealed connections that earlier, simpler analyses of the exact same data had completely missed. It was a total game changer. So, what did watching this 15-year movie actually show them? Let's get to the results. What happened when they linked those early PFS levels to these long, unfolding cholesterol journeys? First off, they found that the women's cholesterol levels didn't all follow one path. They naturally found into three very distinct long-term journeys or trajectories. As you can see here in these top two graphs for total and LDL cholesterol, there was a low group, a middle group, and a high group, and each one followed its own unique pattern over those 15 years. Now, just discovering these different paths was pretty interesting by itself, but the real multi-million-dollar question was this. Could the PFAS levels that were measured in a woman's blood at the very start of the study predict which of these cholesterol paths she would end up on for the next decade and a half? And this slide right here, this shows the answer was a resounding yes. Women who had the highest mix of PFAS exposure at the beginning of the study were 1.79 times more likely to be on that high, unfavorable path for LDL cholesterol. And remember, that's the bad cholesterol that can lead to plaque buildup in our arteries, increasing the risk for heart disease. So that's an almost 80% higher chance. It's a huge deal. The researchers were even able to zero in on some of the specific culprits. It turns out that higher levels of certain types of PFOS, especially different forms of PFOS and another one called PFHSS, were the strongest predictors of being in those less favorable, higher cholesterol groups. And these happen to be some of the most common PFOS found out there in the world and inside people, which makes this a really widespread concern.
So this is way more than just an interesting stat. It adds a really significant new piece to this giant puzzle of how our environment is affecting our health in the long run. So what does this all mean for us?
What this study does is it gives us a powerful new line of evidence. By using this really clever movie method, it strengthens the case that these forever chemicals can mess with our lipid metabolism and literally change our health story over many, many years.
And the researchers themselves really highlight how important this is. They say PFAS exposure could be a modifiable risk factor. Now that's a key phrase. It means this isn't just about our genes or bad luck. It's a risk factor that we could potentially reduce through things like policy changes and personal choices to actually improve our health down the road.
You know, this study is such a powerful reminder that the chemicals we're exposed to every day can have these really subtle but profound effects on our health over our entire lives. It proves that looking at the long-term movie, instead of just a snapshot, can reveal these hidden connections. And it really makes you wonder, what other stories about these forever chemicals in our health are still waiting to be told?